So let's see how it sounds. What's going on YouTube, and welcome back to another video. Now today we're going to be taking out my 1997 BMW 328i, and if you guys haven't seen the previous videos on this car, I'd really recommend checking them out, and I'll make sure to leave a link above. Now the full story with this car was I bought this about a year ago from some teenagers that wrecked it in the front, telling me that they got hit by a drunk driver. The E36 chassis has always been a favorite of mine, given the fact that I've actually owned a couple of these now. I had a 318 IS coupe in high school. I then had a 318i that I bought from auction for $425, I believe. This was my first time tackling on a E36 convertible. One last announcement before we get on the road is I wanted to let you guys know that I've opened up a YouTube memberships page. So if you want to become a member of the channel and really invest in some of the more exclusive content, some of the more behind the scenes looks, including the custom emojis, I'll make sure to link that down below. Let's get on the road and I'll see you guys there in a sec. Okay, so I'm gonna start off with the exhaust valve closed, so it'll be a little bit quieter, and then about halfway through the video, I'll turn it back on. But at least let's hit the road. God, it's just beautiful today. Perfect day for a drive. It's a Sunday afternoon, so we may hit a little bit of traffic, but I'm hoping on this road that we can at least open it up and enjoy this car for what it is. And really, the E36, it can do things that'll drive you mad. Like, the airbag light is on, I have no idea why. The windshield wiper fluid spray thingamabobber, it shoots too high, so if you're driving with the top down, it gives you a little bit of a shower. But once you get past that, it's pretty brilliant. It's really good fun. Now, it doesn't feel as light on its feet as like a Miata, but it feels very stable, very solid. Like you could cruise at high speeds on the highway in this car and it really is unbothered. And I think that's what I like about it the most, is it's just very comfortable. And yet you can chuck it in a corner and it's still a BMW, you know? It definitely has that driving edge to it and that pedigree. But since it's a convertible, you have a little bit of cowl shake that you'll have to kind of get used to. It's nothing really crazy. I felt other convertibles that feel a million times worse than this car. And one of the best investments you can do is the little wind shield in the back that's right behind you. It really cuts down on a lot of the turbulence that you'll get inside the cabin. So even though we have the top down and the windows up, it's relatively civilized in here. And even with the valve closed, it sounds really nice. Just that classic BMW inline six sound. You really can't go wrong. Easy on the downshifts. I upgraded the shift knob to a Condor speed shop. It's got a nice hefty weight to it. Makes the throws a little bit easier because it's so tall. The exhaust sounds crazy, bouncing off the mountainside like this. God, what a thing. And as the seasons change, I think one of the best parts about this is you see all the leaves around turning different colors. I mean, you see the hues of yellow and red coming in. And even though summertime here is always going to be fun, I think one of my favorite seasons is the fall. You really get to just enjoy a little bit of the cooler weather while it transitions over. And now it's telling me my washer fluid's low. This is BMWs, man. They'll always do these weird, quirky things, but you kind of have to grow to love it if you really want to be invested in these cars. But this type of stuff really doesn't bother me. As long as the check engine light doesn't come on and it runs good, I'd call that a pretty good day. But another thing that I also did want to mention with you guys too that is actually super cool with this is the exhaust system set up on it. So I actually have a Turner Motorsport valved exhaust that's off of a E36 M3. Okay, so what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna activate the valved exhaust. This is the lock and unlock mechanism. I use power from the optional CD changer that you can find in these in the trunk, since the battery's in the trunk, and I was able to jump it so that I can open and close the valve, which makes it really easy. Now, this is gonna be a little bit louder, but it will be a little bit more enjoyable for you guys, I hope. And yet, you won't notice the difference right now. But I did just activate the valve, so let's see how it sounds. You can hear it really just bouncing off the mountainside. Amazing. Yeah, what a thing. I love it right in that mid-range. Ride's really nice. The ECS tuning coilovers really made a difference. It used to kind of feel like a boat. The shocks were very soft, which was nice for like daily driving, but for me, I like the car to feel a little sharp and a little bit on its toes, if you know what I mean. You could probably go spring strut combo if you wanted to, but this feels like a good compromise. Feels solid. Car's a little bit heavier than other E36, like a sedan, a coupe, or a compact, but it's a discernible amount, you know. Just feels like it packed on a couple of pounds over the summer, you know what I mean? God, it is fun though. Very fun. Alright, so let's try it now with the valve closed and see how it sounds. Yeah, I mean, it's pretty subtle for aftermarket exhaust. Like, if you were looking for something that has no drone, it's pretty much one of the best that I've heard, at least. Because when you go like 2.5 inch, 3 inch, you gotta get some noise in the cabin. But this time around, it's honestly so subtle that you would think it's almost stock. Stock exhaust, especially if you do something with the flap on those, which the 328 originally came with a valve on it itself to also produce less drone in the cabin. But this one is just like an upscaled version of it, which made it really easy to install, and you don't have to run a vacuum line from the brake booster all the way back on this car because it's already set up for it. So it's really something I would highly recommend on either the E36 M3 or the 328i. And I mean, you really can't go wrong. I love it. It sounds fantastic, but not as fun as opening it up. So just at the push of a button, we're back in business. Hit it with the little downshift. It's very addicting. God, that's so awesome. It'll get get you in a lot of trouble though. You really got to be careful where you're doing this. Of course, we're like on some back roads where there's not too many cars or people right now. But just be wary that it is very intoxicating, especially when you put it on for the first time, to just give it the beans all the time. And just hear that little pop, 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 pop on the deceleration. It's just so satisfying. Yes. And I love just matching, getting a nice little rev match, 40 miles an hour, second gear. Just a little bit. This engine just loves to sing. It really feels unfazed by any of this. It's so silky smooth and linear in terms of the power delivery, and that's what makes these BMWs so legendary, man. I don't know how else to explain it. You just have to drive one and you'll really understand why people like this era so much. And spending some time wrenching on it, it's not as bad as you would think. Sure, you may need some specialty tools here or there, use some high quality Torx sockets especially, but really besides that, you should be in good shape to work on it yourself. There's a reason why so many people go after these chassis now. It feels like a ballerina. It's just so dead centered when it comes to just the weight distribution. I mean, very clever stuff, just having the battery in the back to really make sure that it's in tune. And even in the convertible version, you really feel that, you know? That guy was just standing up on his motorcycle. So with the interior on this car, I didn't go too crazy, but one thing that I did really enjoy with this, and I still do, is the cassette player that was previously installed in this. So it has like this period correct Kenwood cassette player. As you can see, I have quite an assortment of cassettes over there. And that's something that I didn't really see myself getting into, but I found so much joy in just being able to go to the record store and just see what kind of vintage cassettes they have. So that's been something that's also a huge plus with this one. As you can see, it has the sports package seats, so it has like this little thing that protrudes out, so it makes it a little bit more comfortable on the long drives. Everything else though is pretty typical E36 stuff in here. No door cards falling apart, which is a miracle. A lot of these you see that, but this one was actually in really, really good shape because the original owner has full documentation of this right before the teenagers bought it. And that's why I decided to go for it. And here, I'll show you the engine real quick. And I think this is my favorite part of this 328 really, is the M52 B28 engine. Now this is a 2.8 liter dual overhead cam inline six, and if there's one thing that BMW is really good at, and it's making these old school inline sixes, and this one is no exception. It's been stone cold reliable. Hasn't given me any major issues. The one thing that I did do as a part of preventative maintenance though is I actually did the water pump, the thermostat housing, which I converted from aluminum, which was previously plastic, and went through all the tensioners and belts, and that really made a huge difference in terms of my own peace of mind, just not having to worry if something is gonna happen or this car is gonna leave me on the side of the road. And luckily it hasn't. I've actually taken this car along almost the entire Olympic Peninsula. For those, I don't know if you're very familiar with the state of Washington, but there's this huge thing where you take a ferry and you can go along all the edge of Washington. And it's a really beautiful drive. So I must have drove this car maybe like 500 or 600 miles, and it was absolutely trouble-free. Didn't give me any issues at all, which was really awesome. Again, here's the coilovers. I do have the camber plates on here. I am running a slightly more aggressive negative camber setup with my most recent alignment that I got, because again, I like to take this to the track. I don't mind the wear on the inside a little bit more, as long as I get a little bit more turn in when I'm just like having fun on the streets. But at the end of the day, I honestly drive like a grandma most of the time when I'm driving this thing. It doesn't really have the eagerness of the coupe or the sedan, is what I've kind of noticed. It's a lot more relaxed, especially with the 2.93 gear ratio and the diff. It's a little bit longer of a final drive, but what's nice is you can cruise and hum along at like 80 miles per hour, and it really doesn't bother the car in any sort of way. I think some things that I'll have upcoming next for this is I'll probably do a brake service on it. I was thinking about maybe even doing a big brake kit in the front, but again, I think it's really good at where it's at. And you know, for me, I've always been a fan and proponent of just kind of keeping cars OEM plus. And I think that's kind of the same thing that I want to do with this car as well, and just kind of enjoy it for really what it is and not take too much away from what it originally was intended for. Just a top-down cruiser, just like on a beautiful day like this. And I think this will be a great time for us to get behind the wheel. Now, before we get into the video, let me know down in the comments what you think about the E36 chassis. Is this a well-regarded classic, or do you think it's a little bit overrated these days? Because, like I said, these used to be a dime a dozen way back in the day, but for whatever reason, these are really shot up in terms of value, especially like a half decent one. Because I remember you'd be able to get a E36 M3, for example, for under 10K, but granted the economy, inflation, and just the overall market value of older BMWs typically tend to go up once they hit the bottom of the depreciation curve. It seems to be happening with this model as well. Just something to think about, but overall, I feel really grateful that I get to, you know, own something like this, drive something like this. And I know it's not the fastest car in the world, but it really does something for me. I think it has a lot of personality, and that's what I kind of like about it. And it's understated. It's not like very ostentatious and like in your face. Whereas I kind of felt like that with the Bug Eye whenever I drive that. But this just feels like something you can even go on a date in. Like, it just seems really versatile, and you can have a lot of fun with it with the top down. And this is one of my favorite drives ever. It's about an hour out from the city, but you just really can't go wrong. It's just a fantastic drive. And with this view in the water, I mean, you can't really go wrong, man. It's just great. Front and rear, and a little bit negative camber up front. I mean, it just dives into the corners.